Solving the world's problems 12 ounces at a time. It's Dudes and Beer.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome, episode 347. Wow, we are 3 episodes away, less than a month away from the official rebrand of Dudes and Beer into Curious Realm. And you know, it's interesting because our guest tonight, as I do, I connect with our guests before we go live with the show. It would be silly for me not to. So beforehand, he was like, man, you know, why are you changing the name? Not everybody's hip to why we're changing the name. The whole reason why we're changing the name is so that we can grow bigger and better, folks. We have gotten to a point guest-wise where not necessarily that we're up against a brick wall. We got great connections with producers and people who bring us guests all the time. Guests bring guests. But I want to go out and start like leading panels. I want to start getting people like Caroline Corey, Michio Kaku, that kind of stuff. And Dudes and Beer, the title of that is just, it's not necessarily on brand for those folks. So I realize that doing what I do, doing what I've done for years and that kind of stuff. So it was one of those, it was a long, hard decision. I discussed it with my wife, Amy, for a long time before I pulled the string and did it. And it was one of those that once I pulled the string and said, it's happening, it felt so good. It felt so good to be moving in that direction with everything that we've done. And it's all because of you guys. It's because of you guys that we were able to recently win our People's Choice Award in the People's Choice Podcast Awards for News and Politics, beating out the Politico EU podcast. Gotta love that. Thank you so much for everybody that went and voted for that. Thank you so much for everyone who is listening always to this show. I can't wait for the transmutation, and I cannot wait to bring the message to a larger audience. Speaking of messages, speaking of audiences, let's go ahead and get into our Dudes and Beer Nudes of the Week real quick. It's been a hot ticket minute since we've done this, but every week we post all kinds of great articles on the Dudes and Beer Facebook group to spur conversations and also to litmus test the audience and the group members to be like, hey, what are you guys into? What are you guys responding? The new mission to be able to divert asteroids before they ever make it to Earth orbit or beyond our sun. Out of defensenews.com, DARPA has caught a gremlin drone in midair. Can it grab 4.5 an hour? Out of CBS News, drone video shown at Kyle Rittenhouse trial shows teen fatally shooting a man at close range during the Kenosha riots. Out of Futurism, new brain implant lets you type 90 words per minute by just thinking. We will be getting into topics like that tonight, as a matter of fact, with our good friend and guest, Dr. Robert Duncan. Hey, you know, if I'm going to get a brain implant, that's probably the most useful one for me to get. Out of news.com.au, whistleblower claims Pfizer safety data has been falsified. And out of Big Think, Metaverse augmented reality inventor warns it could be far worse than social media. Those are just some of the amazing articles that we have posted over on the Dudes and Beer Facebook group this last week. Stop on by, check it out, join the group, join the conversation. Part of the conversation today between group members Matt Hale, Craig Hart, myself, a few other folks, was about this tragedy this last week at the former Astroworld complex in Houston, my hometown, my home amusement park. Like, I had an Astroworld season pass when I was a kid in high school, once I had a car. And to know that, they did a concert at Astroworld again, awesome. To know that it skipped so many protocols, so many security protocols, that even the chief of police went and met personally with Travis Scott and the Live Nation and the directors of it, and was like, listen, this seems like a really dangerous situation going on, folks. I think you may need to take care of some stuff. And unfortunately, not a lot was heeded when it came to that. And now we are dealing with a mass casualty event on our hands. And unfortunately, 8 people met their demise in that incident. Things happen horribly, folks. And I don't want to diminish anybody's pain right now. I work in the live events industry. I worked in rock and roll for years, and now I work in the realm of corporate AV. I have worked festivals. I've helped organize festivals, all kinds of. Now, granted, it was typically hippie jam bands, things like that. You weren't talking about 50,000 people who weren't, like, paying attention enough to each other. Like, they were all hula hooping and things. This was a crowd of 50,000 crazed people that ended up trampling 300 and injuring 300 and trampling to death 8. Now, you might be saying, like, Chris, you're dwelling on this for a minute. Part of the reason I am, Dr. Robert Duncan was a big whistleblower when it came to his books, How to Tame a Demon and Project Soulcatcher. These are books that talk about cybernetic warfare. These are books that talk about mind control technologies that are used by agencies to psychically drive people. Now, tonight on the radio, there is a show. Sorry about that, Gene Krause. There is a show that will be coming on mainstream radio. I'm not going to name the show, but the whole show tonight is about this event and how this event was an MK Ultra-esque satanic cult ritual intended to harvest the souls of people and quite literally kill people on purpose, to sacrifice 8 people. That is some of the conflagrated conspiracy going around. Presumed conspiracy. Now, granted, I'm not going to say they're in some wild imagery like, hey, right here, I've got it on screen. You can see the voodoo white skull. You might think, hey, look at that. There's a white skull and flames and everything else. White skull, like they use that in voodoo. Yes, they use that in voodoo healing rituals. That is a healing symbol. It is not used in voodoo as a means by which to put a curse on anybody. Nothing like that. The shirt he's wearing, people are saying that it's like representations of demons coming through a portal and them using the powers of the show to summon these powers in. And you know, it really is an example, I think, of how fast people are willing to jump to a conclusion and how fast people are willing to, I think, reach for the top, reach for the, I guess, the brass ring when it comes to wild stuff and things that are out there. So I don't know. But I can tell you right now, these accidents happen. They happen regularly, folks. It doesn't have to be. And I mean, people were going off in comments about how Travis Scott was born on the exact day that the Satanic Bible was released. I'm here to tell you, folks, own a copy of the Satanic Bible, read the Satanic Bible. Nowhere does it say in the Satanic Bible, sacrifice people, perform blood sacrifice. That is not what Satanism is about. So feel free to actively familiarize yourself with a belief, with a belief system, before you start entangling it in something which it is utterly not about. Utterly not. Like, we actively have members of the Church of Satan in our Dudes and Beer group. Nowhere were they like, hey, yeah, whoo, thank God the sacrifice went right this weekend. Like, that's not what happened. There was a horrible, horrible incident that went down. Now, are there other things that come about? Are there other questions that come about? Yes, there are questions that come about. And the police are investigating that. Like, why did Travis Scott continue to perform? And I can tell you right now, probably because, hey, you see people fall down, you see people you see all kinds of things from stage. What you don't do is necessarily stop the performance until you are told stop the performance. So was it wrong of him to keep going? Sure. Was it a all-encompassing ritual to harvest souls for Satan? I really don't think so. Feel free to listen to the show out there tonight. I'm not discouraging anybody to not listen to the show on the radio that's about this. I'm not even going to name the show because I like the show. I like the host, but it's one of those like, wow, okay, that's pretty out there, and pretty jump to conclusion-esque. So on that note, we're going to move forward. We're going to go ahead. We're going to be bringing on our good friend and guest, Robert Duncan, right after we talk about a couple things. First thing is, of course, our good friends, True Hemp Science, right here out of Austin, Texas. True Hemp Science is home to some of the best darn CBD oil that you can find in this country. I have traveled around the country, just went to some dispensaries and got some CBD while I was on the road, and still the best stuff around. Still love it. TrueHempScience.com, full spigeric process used to harvest everything, full spectrum CBD. Whole plant is used, bud, stems, seeds, trimming, everything, root, to produce some of the best CBD out there with terpene spectrums and everything else. Stop on by and check it out. TrueHempScience.com is the website. Dude7 is the code that you want to use to save 7% off your entire cart of $50 or more. Once again, that code is Dude7. You will get 7% off your entire cart of $50 or more and get two free 25 milligram edibles. Stop on by, check them out today. While you're online checking them out, please do not forget Podcast Cadet.
Have you considered starting a podcast? Looking for a way to make your business a voice of authority in an industry? Then Podcast Cadet is the solution for you. Whether starting a podcast for yourself, your brand, business, school, church, or just plain fun, Podcast Cadet is here to help you navigate the waters of the podcast industry. Specializing in one-on-one consultation and training with industry professionals in fields ranging from podcast technology and editing to distribution, monetization, and even social media strategies. Podcast Cadet tailors their services to the specific needs of you and your podcast. Do you already have a podcast and trying to find ways to engage and grow your audience? Sign up for your Podcast Cadet audit today and let us help you explore new and exciting ways to leverage your content and elevate your podcast brand to whole new levels. From consultational workshops to affordable podcast production and maintenance packages, Podcast Cadet is your one-stop shop for everything podcast related on the internet. Visit podcastcadet.com today to sign up for your consultation or training and use code DUDES20 to save 20% off your entire purchase. That website again is podcastcadet.com.
That's right, folks. Stop on by podcastcadet.com today. Full disclosure, I am one of the founders of Podcast Cadet. The whole reason I started that is because I love podcasting. I love this industry. And I like to make sure that people who start podcasts and do podcasts do it the best they can from the start. So many times you end up way down the road, and there are so many things that you may have forgotten. So stop on by, check that out. Our guest tonight, the amazing Robert Duncan. We lost connection during commercials and stuff like that. Let's see if he is back. Are you back, Dr. Duncan?
I am on a different line. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I am. How are you?
Oh, good. The last thing I heard before I was disconnected was the Houston events and satanic sacrifices. I don't know how that story ended.
It's been interesting because, like I said in the thing, I work in live events. That's what I do for a living. And I have definitely worked my fair share of rock and roll events, definitely worked my fair share of concerts and festivals, and seen accidents happen, seen people get knocked over in mosh pits, all kinds of stuff. But there are a group of people, and even a radio host out there right now doing a show about how this was a satanic ritual brought about to harvest the souls of 8 people. It's a little rich. It's a little much. I'm not going to say that wild things don't abound, that symbology doesn't happen, but I don't know about that one. I don't know about that. Now, granted, when we've had you on before, and one of the things that many people brought up was MK Ultra and Altamont. Things like that. These were the rabbit holes people were going down. So it was interesting to me that people were bringing up the fact that they were using MK Ultra-esque projection images to like hypnotize the crowd and all that kind of stuff. Perhaps.
Yeah, that is fascinating.
Perhaps. But I don't know that it was to the purposeful end to harvest 8 souls. That seems like a very specific number.
It does. I try to stay away from numerology and the significance of it, but yeah. I've been hypersensitized myself to. I look at the clock every day at 111-222-333-444-555. I don't know why. That's what I look at the clock.
Yeah,
I do.
well, I wake up every day at 5:30. Every day.
Wow.
Doesn't matter.
You know what's interesting? A lot of people do between 3 and 5, but I was trying to find some kind of correlation. Let's say we're in a global hive mind and we're all being connected. Why would we be waking up at 5:30? Well, there are a billion Muslims and they use a split sleep schedule, and they get up 2 hours before sunrise to pray. And I'm like, could that be it? I'm just hypothesizing.
Well, if you're talking about mass mind and things like that, that could definitely be absolutely. You're talking about a huge people consciously, actively, spiritually waking up. Yeah. Because really, and there was an article that I posted on the Dudes and Beer group, which you're a part of, Doctor. A few months ago, talking about how our brains are more of a transducer than a computer. And I think I remember tagging you in that, as a matter of fact.
Yes. And that's correct. Explain to your audience what a transducer is. We always think we are separated from the world. Our neurons will give the signal intelligence, give rise to consciousness, that kind of thing. But a transducer, like most antennas, can send signals and receive signals, and that's what a transducer means.
Yeah, precisely. It's something that, takes waves or vibration and turns it into something else, be it a 1 and 0 of data, be it a voice on the other end of a phone, what have you. And that was actually out of Discover magazine, that article. And I think that is where we come to the point of conversation this evening, Doctor, of a firewall for the human mind. And when this concept first came across, it was it was from a conversation that you said that you had with the late great John McAfee.
There's a more famous article, and it was written by a colonel. I'm forgetting his name. He wrote a paper, and everyone should look it up. And it's called The Mind Has No Firewall. Very famous with researchers in this area of cybernetics and mind control and the brains, how to control 7.8 billion brains on the planet, and that kind of thing. And
Timothy L. Thomas.
The mind. Oh, yeah. Give me your thoughts on that.
I mean, the fact is, yes, the mind does have no firewall. It is, as a matter of fact, just like that article said, a transducer. So, unless you're aware of a frequency or anything like that might be different from your everyday, how would you know if you're being hijacked?
That's what I was getting at, precisely. And I said this in 2000 or so when I was writing, and I could see that the human race was going to have an existential crisis about free will. All of Western civilization relies on the concept of free will, from religions to our justice system, the sense of self-responsibility. And so I don't use the term free will anymore. I say what we're striving for is self-autonomy. And, I know I'm just playing with words a little bit, but there are always external factors, from advertising to the news, your five senses. Let's just pretend there are five senses, even though we've discovered more. And you can never shut those down. So those, think of ports in a computer, those are ways to hack a human mind. People say, well, advertising goes through my cerebral cortex so I can filter it out and I can decide on one or two ply toilet paper. And, well, that's not true. Why does advertising work? And it's such a huge industry. So we are always being influenced, be it at school, around our friends, listening to music. Now, the interpretation may be very individual. I mean, I listen to hardcore, heavy metal, rock music, but I'm not satanic because I do it. I just enjoy that kind of sound.
Yeah.
And so it can be, a personalized experience. But in terms of there's no firewall, we have to get into the philosophical conversation of what does a firewall look like for the human mind. Now, I want you to answer it, and then I'll get into more details, some more questions, or answers. Human race needs to discuss.
Yeah. Well, and I would think that a firewall for the human mind would have to be something physical. It would have to be something as crazy as it sounds, I'd love to say a tinfoil hat, but everybody knows tinfoil would actually amplify the signals.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, like whenever you put tinfoil, you didn't put tinfoil on your antenna as a kid to hurt the signal and keep it from getting to you.
Yeah. No,
you did that as a means to increase the surface area.
That had to have been a counterintelligence thing that
absolutely.
got started, like flat Earth or whatever. See what people believe.
But I would think that it would have to be something along those lines. It would have to be. It would have to be something physical, I would think.
There's a whole bunch of categories. So, let's say you built a superconducting coffin. I mean, no one can afford superconductor and keep it pipe full of liquid nitrogen for their house or room. And, the dangers of that, obviously, that's a multi-million-dollar project. And let's assume that would work. and you can't build a suit out of it. You can't walk around in it. So you created a coffin or prison of your own making if it were to be physical. So in order to be practical, it would have to be something else. And a lot of people are looking at jamming. Well, what if you can jam the signal? Now, that introduces a different problem. So if you jam all the frequencies, one, it's not allowed. Of course, they'll pass laws against it. But let's say you could do a 10-foot radius and signals. Well, you're jamming your own brain signals in a sense. So you're adding noise to the brain. And if you add noise to the brain, I did read one medical journal article that said that can actually help intelligence. But if you add too much, it would cause schizophrenia, and it would increase the rate of schizophrenia amongst the population. So there's a window of opportunity, but they can overpower the signal. That's how signal-to-noise ratio works, and that's how electronic warfare works. And so that method, while it can be useful, isn't the final solution. Now, look at your neurons or your brain as a transceiver, as you said. What could you do in order to make yourself less of an antenna? So you can break off the antenna. Well, you don't want to break your brain. But the chemicals, the neurotransmitters, and it's actually the ratio in the synapses of the inhibitory to excitatory ratio that is very important. The excitatory ratio, which there are many things, such as certain drugs and other, make you more of an amplifier, literally, in terms of your like putting tinfoil on your antenna of your TV. And what you want to do, if you found a drug or a genetic engineering system to grow more inhibitory, well, it would make you depressed, and you'd suffer huge depression, loss of motivation. So to keep that ratio perfect is the hard part. But that's another trick that can be used as a firewall for the human mind. And there are a couple more.
Interesting.
But I want you to give me a little feedback on what I said.
And I mean, there are definitely nootropic drugs out there that you can take. There's all kinds of stuff like selenium, everything else, which is fantastic for brain function, all that kind of stuff. So sure, if you were to, as you said, alter the chemical makeup of yourself to where it, I guess, doesn't heterodyne that signal?
Yeah, as strongly. Now, the actual the basic computing function of it is a sigmoidal function. It hits, on the most part, and I'm generalizing, it hits a threshold and then decides to fire. And so how do you dampen that threshold? But the closer you are to the overall threshold and the harmonics of the macro and micro circuitry of the brain functions that have been mapped out, the cognitive brain, then a small, very small amount of energy can cause them to trigger. Now, the kind of the secret sauce of the lock and key method is to make them cause a cascading effect of thoughts, of words, of meanings, of emotions, and that kind of thing. And so I remember reading about this woman professor, I think it was University of Nevada, and it makes for a very good non-lethal weapon. And she found a resonance frequency in the microwave range that would stimulate the brain cells of dopamine making, it's a neurotransmitter.
Wow.
Brain cells, and it would cause the person to go into like LSD, kind of a shock of dysfunction.
Sure.
And, that would be good in warfare. And, like spraying a battlefield with whatever doses of LSD. And without harming the person, and their brain would come back to normal. But the problem with that as well, like we see with the Havana syndrome, is depending on power levels, you can cause cavitation, which would fry the outer level of the brain, called mild traumatic brain injury, or you can, or you would toxify the neurons by the flooding of that neurotransmitter, and that would kill them off as well. So you would see some brain damage, but it's still, according to the military, it's non-lethal. Well,
yeah.
A body without a brain, I'm sorry, is not worth living.
It sounds pretty lethal.
Yeah, and it has dial-in lethality capabilities, and that just means up the amperage. It's sort of like the active denial system that everyone knows about, that makes you feel like you're on fire, and it fries the
LiDAR, all that kind of good stuff.
1/16th of the the skin, and the Chinese have it. But it's funny, even though we have all these secret weapons, we won't talk about them. And the Marines wanted it, and we wouldn't. Whoever has control of what weapons they get would not give it to them. Now, I don't know if they have it now and if it's in use, but, I suppose it's better than killing people, but it's still, you're more likely to use it. And so we're going to have a bunch of, dumb enemies or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking.
Well, and, Ryan Milios from the group actually commented maybe they played a frequency into the crowd that drove everybody nuts. Like precisely what we're talking about here, Doctor.
Oh, yeah. Did you ever see the movie The Kingsman?
Yes.
Yeah, remember the church scene? Mm-hmm. And they were using frequency to drive people, into violence against their will. Well, the FBI was doing a similar test in the Tenderloin many decades ago to see what frequencies would cause, it was the bad part of town, the ghetto, and would cause people to, if they could increase violence over that area of the city, or if they could calm them down. And you can see how that would be useful, again, in order to control large populations. We don't want to go to war. You like our president. Okay, let's send this signal over the population to calm them down. Or we want a revolution. All right, let's amp up the signal,
Well, and that
that
was definitely a tactic used in the Gulf War, as we've talked about previously with both you and Dr. John Hall, where the voice of God.
That was voice of God weapons. Yeah, it was the tactic.
And
voice of God weapons, they have so many purposes. But if you hear a voice in your head and you can't directionally find where the sound source is, and you're superstitious, I don't know what the right word is, you will believe
religious in any kind of way.
Religious in any kind of way, and you don't know about these technologies, you're going to believe that you must follow those commandments. And the CIA has an old weapon called acronym RHIC, or RHIC, which is Remote Hypnotic Inter-Cerebral Control. And, again, we think we have free will, but we can be hypnotized by these signals, and that's in order to make sure that the fundamental brain frequencies are lined up, so the lock-on is more powerful for that particular individual, and direct commands. Now, if you're hearing a command, auditory speech, sort of like what you spoke of earlier, the brain chip that can type 90 words a minute. Imagine being able to do that remotely. And we've been able to do it. I don't know if I'm releasing top secret information or not, but we've been able to do this for a long time. And then it finally reaches the public sector, and and then we start regulating these technologies, and everything's going according to plan, as I said it would many decades ago. But I worry about people like Elon Musk that are going to be set up for Neuralink. Oh, he's behind my torture. He's the one controlling brains. They brain chipped me without my knowledge while I was sleeping or at the dentist's office. And, and similarly with Zuckerberg, I worked on a type project, a Google type project, way before at DARPA, before these companies were ever even dreamed of. But we can do thought insertion into people. So we seed them with ideas and help fund them. And you've heard of a company called QIntel or InQtel. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And that's basically a privatized CIA seed funding group. And Oculus, I believe, Facebook's new Meta, was seed funded by them. And, if you look deeply enough where the seed funding goes, you'll find it's all about intel of the individual for many of these big companies. And I remember even the Microsoft employees got upset when they got into government contracts, but it's more money, more profit, and so everyone's produced by profit, obviously, and not morals. So, when a Google executive came out a couple weeks ago and said, the singularity is here, Silicon Valley, excuse me, is creating an AI god. That is absolutely true. Soon it will be so powerful that people will not be able to distinguish the supernatural from this artificial created God. And everyone will have their own personal Jesus, their Alexa in their head, so to speak. And hopefully it will be helpful. But the human race is going to be altered significantly with cybernetics.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And the concept of wetware, the concept of even things like Neuralink, which they're talking implant, that kind of stuff. But really, it's even just ear-worn on the outside where it can pick up your brainwave functions. I've got
that's right. Infrared. There are over 26 ways I've identified that remote interfacing can be done, and it's what I can't talk about in detail because it'll get me in trouble. But there's a window of opportunity, I say, between the small scale near field and the large field scale. And I recently posted something. What I can do is ask people questions in order to research them without giving up information.
Sure.
And that is classified. So I said, I posted all the bases on Antarctica, and why are they so interested in the South Magnetic Pole? They're not just drilling in the ice to find viruses they can weaponize. Yeah. There's another reason. All these countries are there, and it gets, the rabbit hole goes deeper, obviously.
Well, sure. I mean, especially whenever you get into known programs like HARP, the High Altitude Auroral Research Project, like all they did was bombard the ionosphere with radio waves for years and years and years. And you might think like, okay, well, sure, they're cooking the ionosphere, they're helping create an ozone hole, stuff like that. But it was really about bouncing communication.
Yes, correct. As well as weather modification.
Sure.
And
yeah, because if you heat up the atmosphere over somewhere, you can change the weather.
And Dr. Nick Baggage was right. The angels don't play this harp. It also had to do with mind control over populations, as well as over-the-horizon radar for nuclear launches. And, it served a lot of purposes. But what people don't realize is that was built in 1991. Mind control, remote mind control, has been going on since 1960s. And it has, it also, there were not even Sputnik, the first satellite, had been launched then. Now, of course, we have redundant systems of, space as well as bouncing off the ionosphere signals or the magnetic fields of the Earth. So when you look at surveillance systems if you view the Earth as a magnetic coil, somewhat twisted, the north magnetic pole doesn't quite match up with the south magnetic pole. But anyway, math can fix all that. And you can model it as a coil. It penetrates the Earth. That means we are bathed in a signal that we can't get out of, in the Schumann resonance. We evolved as a species under the Schumann resonance. So clearly that's why we feel the calmest, as they call it alpha wave state, the most aware calm state we can have, is because that is the electrical signal stimulus we evolved under and it's caused by lightning and other reasons. But now we artificially have amped it up, and you can see the harmonics of the Schumann resonance going further. So it's another form of something going on with our planet. And we worry about, we're pumping in too much carbon dioxide to the atmosphere.
Oh, sure.
Oh, there's a whole bunch of other things going on.
We contribute
that people need to be aware of.
Yes, exactly. We contribute a lot to the external weather of this planet. However, there are magnetic changes going on globally that are far beyond us.
We are creating internal storms in the magna of the Earth.
Yep.
And it's chaos effect. We don't know what we're doing because if a butterfly that flaps its wings in China can create a hurricane in Florida, and weather is that complex. And so similarly complex systems are asteroid belts. That's why it kind of scares me. We're playing with asteroids and their gravitational fields and deflecting them. We don't know exactly what the consequences will be. Or, as you said, playing with the ionosphere and magnetosphere. Well, there's weather below the Earth that people forget about, which can cause earthquakes and volcanoes or supervolcanoes and other things too.
Yeah, precisely. And all of that, interestingly enough, is frequency-based. And like you were saying, let's get into it because we've only got you for a few more minutes. What is the Schumann resonance? Because you hear that term thrown around a lot in healing communities. You hear that term thrown around a lot in psychic communities, stuff like that. But it is actually a resonant frequency of our planet.
Of our planet, which is changing again because of our atmosphere is getting thicker. One of the layers of it. But it's the electromagnetic bounce between Earth, we call ground, and the charged particles, the charged layers of the outer atmosphere, which are caused by the sun's charged particles that hit it. and ionize it, and hence the term ionosphere. But people often forget about the magnetosphere. Without the magnetosphere, all life on Earth will die, and that's why there's a hole growing over South America, just off the coast. But they're watching very closely because it's getting bigger, and that hole doesn't deflect or capture the charged particles as it's pointed to it. So you would expect higher cancer rates, for example, and other things.
Oh, no. We just lost our guest. How about that? Let's see if we can get him called back real quick. There he is. Are you there, Doc?
Sorry, I don't know what happened.
That is all right. So, I mean, a lot of people forget about these different layers of the atmosphere and what they do. And the fact is, as you were saying, yes, the magnetosphere, like, that's the equivalent of the shields in Star Trek or Star Wars, man.
Exactly.
Like, that is what is deflecting cosmic background radiation. That is what's deflecting, like, the full intensity of the sun.
So, I know I went a little bit off topic.
No, that's okay.
But TI's targeted individuals, which is probably a huge community of your listeners.
It is.
They believe that it's their neighbors doing it to them. And what I'm trying to get them to think about is this is global. Yeah. You cannot escape it as long as you're under Earth's magnetic field. And I want to help them think of the big picture. Not that they're torturing you. Oh, torture is just a means to an end. Satanic cult or whatever. Sure. There's an actual psychological reason that they're doing it, along with gathering data of the best and worst of humans. And remember, one of the weapon systems that is not published is called Satan, Silent Assassination Through Adaptive Networks. Networks meaning social networks, cyber networks, but most importantly, what you were talking about, the transducers, neural networks. So I just want them to think of the bigger picture and moving. There are shielding methods. The most important and easiest, cheapest one is true ground to earth. Every TI notices that their torture is lessened. What the NIH, which can't be trusted, calls electromagnetic sensitivity. Yep. But we know this is a weapon just due to the scripts they run on all TIs. I've interviewed over 2,000 of them. And the scripts are like 7 major ones they run. If they get what's called V2K, voice to skull, or bidirectional linking of communication. Now, this will all come forward now with, like, the brain chips. Oh, my gosh, you can type. I wonder if people can insert thoughts in me. And, slowly the mainstream media will catch up to what we've been doing. We've been changing elections. Democracy doesn't exist anymore. We hacked the justice system because free will doesn't exist anymore. We've done so much damage, right? Invaded religions. Oh, go kill this person. Your God commands it, or lay down your arms, or whatever it may be. But you got to understand all of truth, and unfortunately, evil is part of truth, and you must understand it.
Yeah. And, as you said, there is a great community of TIs that listen to this show, targeted individuals. My heart goes out to them. I have even been told by somebody that I am a targeted individual because of some of the things that I go through at night while I sleep.
Yeah, and it could very well be worldwide, but the ones, like you said, my heart goes out to, are the ones that they are told they're targeted, they're told they're an experiment, they're lied to usually about who's doing it. That's just called false flag interrogation, just very common of CIA interrogation scripts. It's how to create programmed assassins. So make your neighbor, make them believe it's their neighbor. They go kill their neighbor and find out, I've been tricked. Or throw a voice. We do some of the stuff I worked on was voice morphing. So you tell a general, this is, or you tell your army troops, this is the general calling, you intercepted, and they believe the voice print, just natural voice print, and they go the wrong direction or in trap. And, so, there's so much trickery. I encourage people to read some of my work if they want to find out more about the trickery. How much time do I have left?
Just a few more minutes. I know that we were saying it would be short for you this evening, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
One
more question about targeting technology, Robert, because a lot of people would say, not me. A lot of people would say, no way it'll happen to me. A lot of people could say, I am not susceptible to such things. Is it a hypnosis type situation where you have to be open to it for this to happen to you?
No, there's certain things that can sensitize a person to it.
Sure.
People think of hypnosis as strobe lights at a dance club or trance music or, something like that. But the Air Force has been researching this a lot, where they could use both a visual hypnotic effect, an electromagnetic effect, and synchronized brains. Now, when you're synchronizing the fundamental frequencies of the human algorithm, as Dr. Persinger calls it, that is a form of hypnosis. And so when people claim you cannot hypnotize me, they're thinking about Sigmund Freud and a watch swinging back and forth.
Exactly.
And that's not it. That's not how it's done. So that it's like, if you only knew the truth, you would not make that claim. That's what I think of them.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of the brain training, things like that the Air Force was looking into was definitely they were trying to go almost for a means by which to attain insta training.
Yes, correct.
Almost like the Matrix, where it's like, I know how to fly a helicopter.
Yes, and brain-to-computer interfacing would be our next topic of conversation. We have more time, and that is what they were trying to achieve. How do I fly an aircraft or a ship with just my thoughts? And now they talk about it, but they've been working on it for a long, long time.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it came out in Jane's Defense Weekly and Defense One and things like that. Probably about 4 years ago, we covered the fact that they announced that soldiers can now control drones via a headband.
Yeah. Even
when I say drones, it's not like this one or that one. They can control multiple drones. The new fighter planes. The new fighter planes coming out, the new Raptors, have swarms of drones that are like chaff that can be controlled by the pilot's helmet.
No, it even gets deeper. Do you remember one quote that I always like, and I'll end my conversation with it, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't have it in front of me, but Dr. Delgado, he was known as the father of brain chips in the 1950s and 60s, and he made it famous. He was allowed access to patients with, I don't know, he was able to experiment with humans, His most famous one was stopping a bull from charging with a remote control. But he could control humans using electrostimulus to certain areas of the brain. And that was, physical. That wasn't remote. We've come a long way since then. And he said mankind does not have a right to his own mind. That is a liberal point of view. And then he ends his quote with, "Someday soldiers and generals will be electronically controlled by the brain." And we're already seeing that they're saying the soldier 2050 will, and I'm telling you, it's already been done. We have secret armies, but anyway, and will be controlled by electronic stimulus of the brain. And you mentioned swarm theory. And so soldiers will be able to communicate where they are, in a battlefield and what they know. And it will be mapped out in their minds because they're in a hive mind now of where the enemy is that they need to go after. So the military has a lot of interest in this. Now, of course, we only hear the positive. We make paralyzed people walk again. We can type at 90 words a minute. We can have instant education, and we don't have to pay for, a university degree. All the benefits, accelerated education, sound great. But remember, there's always a dark side that they're not telling you, and that's called dual purpose. And we'd always get good budgets from Congress, billion-dollar budgets for our projects, and allow the hospitals like Mass General Hospital to give us their patients to experiment on who had dementia and no family. If we just told them all the good uses, we would never tell them what we were really using it for in terms of warfare. And so I wanted to end with that.
Wow. And I want to thank you so much for your time. I want to thank you so much for your commitment to this topic over decades, having found out what the things you were researching and doing were being used for, having come out with the information that you came out with.
Well, yeah, and thank you. That does encourage me, and I see it every day. I get someone who's read my book who was just, at their wit's end and said I saved their life. Yeah. And I thrive on that, that I'm doing good works. And I see that it's coming out. We are forcing their hand in early kind of, they wanted to keep this secret as long as they could, obviously, and it's coming out. And so I hope I had a part in that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your dedication. And we will talk to you very, very soon. Next time we will be a whole new incarnation. So, yeah.
Well, that's right. Creep. I still am going to call you dudes and beer. But...
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, take care. Thank you so much. And we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good, Chris. You take care.
Take care. Right. And later. Thank everybody else for coming on. Thank you to all of you targeted individuals. Believe it or not, y'all are the first cause that this show really got behind. I remember it was after we had Dr. John Hall on the first time that I received an email from a targeted individual in Israel. And that began my life-changing research into this topic, my involvement in the community, becoming a part of numerous communities on social media, and it's one of the many causes that we feel strongly about. So thank you guys so much. As always, thank you for everything and your support. Can't wait. Just a few more weeks until Curious Realm comes about. So many more new guests, stuff like that. Until next time, everybody, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember, you can't be good. Be good at it. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Dudes and Beer Podcast. To listen to our audio streams or chat with us live, download the official Dudes and Beer app for Android and iDevices, available on Google Play and iTunes markets. For more episodes, content, and information, visit us online at dudesandbeer.com. You can also find our episodes on Breach.tv, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast service. Dudes and Beer is a proud member of the HC Universal Network family of podcasts. For more about our sponsors and other podcasts on this network, visit hcuniversalnetwork.com. Thanks for listening, everybody, and until next time, drink responsibly.